She had reached the point where silence hurt more than noise. The kind of silence that follows loss after loss, when even the wind feels like it has turned its back on you. Her name was Ilara, though no one had spoken it in months. The town at the mountain's edge had quietly erased her. Existence the way people do when tragedy lingers too long, first with pity, then with avoidance, and finally with indifference. Her parents were gone, taken by illness within the same cruel winter. Her husband followed months later, not by death, but by choice. He left without explanation, carrying his bags and his future, while she remained behind with empty rooms and unpaid grief. Friends stopped visiting, neighbors stopped asking. And one evening, after another night of crying into a pillow that no longer smelled like anyone but her, Ilara walked away from the town with nothing but a coat too thin for the cold and a heart already numb. The mountain loomed ahead like a final judge, vast, unforgiving, honest. She didn't go there to die, not consciously. She went there because there was nowhere else left to go. Snow began to fall as night settled, heavy flakes blurring the path until she collapsed near a line of dark trees. Breath shallow, fingers blue. That was when he saw her. The mountain man had lived alone for years, long enough that solitude had etched itself into his posture. His name was Rowan, though he hadn't used it aloud in a long time. He trapped, hunted, survived, and spoke only when necessary to animals, to the fire, to the mountain itself. When he saw her shape half buried in snow, he froze, not out of fear, but disbelief. People didn't come up here. People didn't survive up here. Yet there she was, fragile, broken, breathing. He didn't hesitate. He wrapped her in his heavy coat, lifted her like she weighed nothing, and carried her through the storm to his cabin. When Ilara woke, warmth surrounded her. A fire cracked softly. The smell of pine and stew filled the air. Panic surged until she saw him, tall, broad-bearded, eyes sharp but not cruel. She tried to speak, but her voice broke. Rowan didn't press her. He simply placed a cup of warm broth in her hands and said the first words she'd heard in days that didn't hurt. "You're safe." Those words shattered something inside her. She cried then, not quietly, not politely, but fully, the way people do when they've been strong for too long. Rowan stayed near, not touching her, not leaving either. In the days that followed, she learned the rhythm of the cabin, the chopping of wood, the careful preparation of food, the silence that wasn't empty but steady. Rowan asked nothing of her, didn't pry, didn't judge. And for the first time since everything had been taken from her, Ilara felt something unfamiliar stir beneath the grief. Not hope, not yet, but rest, and as the mountain winds howled outside, she didn't feel alone. If this story is touching your heart so far, take a moment to subscribe, because sometimes the quietest stories heal the deepest wounds. Healing did not arrive all at once. It came in fragments, like sunlight breaking through trees after a long storm. Ilara stayed because Rowan never asked her to leave. She helped where she could, learning to mend clothes, cook simple meals, listen to the mountain's moods the way Rowan did. At night, the silence returned, but it no longer screamed. Sometimes she woke from nightmares, gasping, and Rowan would already be awake, sitting by the fire, presence steady as stone. He never touched her without permission, never spoke when silence was better. Slowly she began to talk, about her parents, about the empty house, about the moment her husband walked away without even looking back. Rowan listened the way mountains listen, without interruption, without judgment. When she finished, he only said, "You didn't deserve that." No one had ever said that to her before. Winter deepened, and with it came danger. One night, a storm worse than any before tore through the valley. The roof groaned, trees cracked, and fear crawled back into Ilara's chest. She curled into herself, shaking. Rowan crossed the room and, for the first time, wrapped his arms around her, not tight, not possessive, just enough to remind her she was real and still here. She clung to him as if he were the last solid thing in the world. In that moment, something changed for both of them. Not romance, not yet, but belonging. Days later, when spring hinted at returning, Rowan took her outside to a ridge overlooking the valley. "You can leave when the path's clear," he said quietly. Ilara looked at the vast land. Then at him, the man who had saved her without asking anything in return. "What if I don't want to?" she asked. Rowan didn't answer immediately. Then he nodded once. "Then stay." Life didn't become perfect. Grief still visited. Memories still hurt. But they were faced together. Ilara learned strength didn't always mean standing alone. Rowan learned solitude didn't have to be permanent. The mountain remained wild, unforgiving, and beautiful, just like the healing process itself. And in each other's presence, they found something neither had been searching for, yet both desperately needed. Not rescue, not ownership, but quiet, steady love. If this story moved you, inspired you, or made you feel less alone, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because more stories like this are waiting. And sometimes one story is all it takes to remind us we're not alone either.